On the morning of July 29, 2018, a French woman was seen having breakfast at a hotel in rural Japan. Minutes later, her movements became impossible to trace. Her phone stopped abruptly, her belongings remained behind, and conflicting accounts emerged. 6 years later, the disappearance of Tiphaine Véron remains unexplained. Tiphaine Véron was born on July 22, 1982 in Rennes, France. When she was 2 years old, she moved with her family to Poitiers, a city where she would spend most of her childhood and adult life. She followed an academic path focused on culture and languages, earning a degree in art history while also studying Russian and Japanese. These studies reflected a sustained interest in history, communication, and foreign cultures that would later influence her decision to travel abroad. In early adulthood, Tiphaine was diagnosed with epilepsy. At first, the condition proved resistant to treatment and required long-term medical monitoring. Over time, her condition stabilized as a result of sustained treatment, allowing her to live independently and without major limitations. By the period preceding her disappearance, her epilepsy was considered well managed and did not prevent her from working, traveling, or maintaining an active daily routine. Professionally, Tiphaine was employed in Poitiers as a school assistant, where she worked with children with disabilities. Her role involved providing daily support in an educational setting and required reliability, structure, and regular engagement. She maintained a stable lifestyle, lived independently, and remained closely connected to her family. This period of her life was marked by routine, long-term planning, and personal discipline, forming the background to the journey she would later undertake. These elements defined her circumstances immediately before her departure. Tiphaine Véron's decision to travel to Japan was the result of long-term planning rather than spontaneity. She organized a 3-week solo journey and documented her itinerary in detailed handwritten notes, listing destinations, accommodation, and travel routes. The trip reflected her long-standing interest in Japanese culture and language, developed through years of academic study. Her plans showed structure and preparation, indicating that the journey was carefully considered. On July 27, 2018, Tiphaine arrived in Japan, landing at Narita International Airport in Chiba Prefecture. She spent her first night in Tokyo, following the travel plan she had prepared before leaving France. On July 28, she continued north to Nikko, a mountainous city in Tochigi Prefecture, about 150 kilometers from Tokyo. Nikko is known for its forests, rivers, and historic religious sites, and attracts many domestic and international visitors. Tiphaine's itinerary included time in the region as part of her planned journey. Later that afternoon, she arrived in Nikkō and checked into the Turtle Inn, where she was scheduled to stay for 2 nights. No irregularities were reported at the time. Surveillance footage recorded Tiphaine walking toward the Turtle Inn between 4 o'clock and 4:30 p.m., confirming her arrival. After checking in, she sent photographs via WhatsApp to people she was in contact with, indicating she had arrived safely. Her messages showed no sign of distress. As Typhoon Jangdari approached, weather conditions worsened and daylight faded. Tiphaine chose to remain inside the hotel that evening. There were no reports of her leaving the premises, and hotel staff noted no unusual behavior or incidents. This marked the last full day during which her location and actions were clearly documented. On the morning of July 29, 2018, Tiphaine was seen having breakfast at the Turtle Inn between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. A fellow guest photographed her at 8:41 a.m., capturing the last confirmed image of her. After breakfast, the timeline becomes unclear. The hotel manager stated that he saw her leave around 9:53 or 9:54 a.m., but phone data later showed signals continuing from her room. Google Maps and Wi-Fi records indicate activity until about 11:40 a.m., when the signal abruptly stopped. These unresolved discrepancies remain central to the case. When Tiphaine did not return, hotel staff entered her room at 10:30 a.m. on July 30th. Her belongings, including her passport and luggage, were untouched. Police were notified, and she was formally reported missing. Searches began in nearby, accessible areas, following standard procedures for adult disappearances in Japan. On August 1, 2018, Tiphaine's family was officially informed by the French embassy. 5 days later, her sister and 2 brothers traveled to Japan to assist local authorities. Their arrival marked the beginning of sustained family involvement in the case. Search operations and public appeals expanded throughout 2018 and 2019. Tiphaine's mother and Desert wrote to French President Emmanuel Macron requesting additional investigative resources, while her sister appealed to tourists who had been in Nikko to share photographs. On November 10, 2018, around 500 people gathered in Poitiers for a solidarity march calling for transparency and continued investigation. In Japan, extensive searches were conducted between May and August 2019, including mountain rescue missions and operations involving trained dogs near the Turtle Inn. Despite these efforts, no physical evidence was found. By May 2019, the family publicly rejected the accidental death theory, citing inconsistencies in witness statements and concerns about the completeness of the investigative file. One early hypothesis suggested an accidental fall into a river or forested area. Although initially favored by authorities, the family disputed this explanation. A scarf found near a river was dismissed as irrelevant, as Tiphaine did not wear scarves and no flooding occurred that day. The presence of all her belongings in her hotel room further weakened the accidental death theory. Another explanation considered the possibility of an epileptic seizure. Tiphaine had a medical history of epilepsy, but her condition was described as well controlled with medication. There were no hospital admissions, medical alerts, or eyewitness accounts indicating that she suffered a seizure on the day she vanished. She was reportedly healthy and in good spirits during breakfast that morning, and no evidence has been found to support this theory. A criminal hypothesis has also been explored. In the months following her disappearance, multiple violent incidents occurred in the Nikkō region, including the discovery of human remains and reports of sexual assaults. One lead involved a man accused of posing as a tour guide near a shrine Tiphaine had planned to visit. Additional scrutiny was directed toward the hotel manager, whose statements about her departure time were inconsistent. Reports of luminol testing in her room mentioned possible bloodstains, though no official forensic conclusions were publicly released. Voluntary disappearance and suicide were also considered, but firmly rejected by Tiphaine's family. They pointed to her detailed travel plans, frequent communication, and the fact that she left behind all essential personal items, arguing that there was no evidence to support either scenario. From 2020 onward, efforts to clarify Tiphaine Véron's disappearance continued through legal, technical, and public initiatives led primarily by her family. They created the Association Unis pour Tiphaine to coordinate actions, maintain visibility, and support ongoing investigative work. The family also sought external expertise to review elements of the case that remained unresolved. French technology entrepreneur Xavier Niel responded to the family's request for assistance and provided technical analysis related to Tiphaine's mobile phone. His findings indicated that the phone had not been switched off in a normal manner. Instead, the shutdown appeared abrupt, suggesting physical damage or forced battery removal rather than voluntary deactivation. This conclusion reinforced doubts about a voluntary disappearance. Private investigator Jean-François Graul was hired to support the family's efforts. Tiphaine's brother continued traveling to Japan, meeting with local police, and comparing her case to other unresolved disappearances in the region. A retired Japanese citizen, Kazunari Watanabe, became a dedicated local ally, repeatedly returning to Nikko to assist with awareness efforts and searches. Legal action also continued in France. The case remained open, and renewed appeals were made to encourage international cooperation. In January 2024, the United Nations Human Rights Committee formally urged Japanese authorities to re-engage with the case and resume investigative efforts. Later that year, awareness campaigns were organized in Nikko, including public distributions of information and direct appeals to potential witnesses. On July 29, 2024, exactly 6 years after Tiphaine Véron disappeared, her brother issued a renewed global call for witnesses. He urged anyone who had been in Nikko on the day she vanished to come forward with photographs or information. Despite years of investigation, Tiphaine Véron remains missing, and her case remains unresolved.